When you stop talking to a woman, something really interesting kicks in inside her mind. It doesn't matter if she was the one who pulled away or if you decided to cut off communication. There's a psychological process that activates deep within her. The real question is, how does this affect how she sees you? Does she forget you completely, or does she start questioning what happened? To get this, we need to dive into attraction and desire from a deeper angle, one rooted in Neil Strauss's insights. This isn't just about absence or playing the classic no-contact move. It's about understanding human interest and how a woman's mind works when someone she had close suddenly disappears. Attraction isn't about being instantly available. Think about it. What's handed to us without effort is rarely valued. It's the uncertainty, the mystery, the feeling of loss that flips the switch. When you step away, you create a void. And that void doesn't get filled right away. Instead, her mind starts working to solve the puzzle. Why did he stop talking? What's going on? Did he find someone else? Did I actually mean something to him? Here's where Neil Strauss's idea of frame control comes in. Whoever controls the frame controls the interaction. When you keep texting, showing too much interest, and staying available, the frame is in her hands. But when you disappear, the whole equation changes. The power in the interaction is no longer hers. Curiosity takes over. Her mind hunts for answers, and her perception of you shifts. That doesn't mean she's going to come running back automatically. Every woman is different, and it depends on the relationship you had. But what's guaranteed is she'll stop and think about you, and that's the first step to making a real impact. What's fascinating is that often, when a man pulls away, the woman doesn't react immediately. At first, it might look like she doesn't care, like she's moving on without missing a beat. But that's just the surface. It's a process that unfolds gradually. The absence hits harder with time. The first days might feel indifferent, but then doubt sets in. Why did he stop talking? And over time, if there was a connection, that absence can become an emotional trigger. Humans are wired to want what they can't have. That's a basic rule of attraction. If she was used to you always being available and suddenly you're not, her mind enters a state of cognitive dissonance. Her reality no longer matches what she expected. And when something doesn't make sense, our brains work overtime to find an explanation. Neil Strauss's studies on attraction and the psychological game in relationships highlight this well. When applied correctly, indifference is one of the most powerful tools, not because it's manipulation, but because it breaks the usual pattern. She can't box you in as just another guy. She can't assume you'll always be there, and when something doesn't fit her perception, you become the center of her attention. Here's where many men slip up. When they start noticing signs that she might be interested again, they rush back in. They hurry to reach out, to show they're still there. And that's exactly when they lose the advantage. Because the moment you show you're still as available as before, the psychological process stops. Her mind no longer needs to look for answers. She's got the confirmation. Yeah, he's still there, nothing's changed. The key isn't ignoring her for no reason or playing games with her emotions. It's about showing value. Neil Strauss explains that perceived social value is a game changer in attraction. If she feels you lost interest because your life is interesting, because you have options, because you're focused on bigger things, her view of you changes. But if she thinks you just stopped talking to mess with her, the effect fades. The goal isn't just for her to think about you, it's for her to see you in a whole new light. Because the moment you become a mystery, when she feels like she's losing you, her perception of your value rises. And that's when you start owning the dynamic. Right now, her mind is processing your absence. At first, she might try to ignore it, act like she doesn't care, maybe even justify the silence by telling herself she was busy or that things just happened that way. But over time, that absence stops being a coincidence and becomes a puzzle she's desperate to solve. The secret here is understanding that attraction doesn't play by logic. It's not about her making a checklist of reasons why she should miss you. Attraction is emotional, subconscious, and triggered by signals that ignite certain responses in her mind. One of the most powerful triggers is uncertainty. When you vanish from her life, she starts wondering if she ever really had your attention, if she actually mattered to you, or if she was just another passing figure in your path. And the human mind hates uncertainty. It craves answers. So she begins digging through memories, searching for clues, questioning when exactly you lost interest or if something she did pushed you away. Here's where something fascinating happens. her mind starts to idealize the connection you once had. When we're constantly in touch with someone, it's easy to see their flaws. Notice the little things that annoy us or take for granted the routine. But once that person disappears, memory begins to rewrite the story. What used to be ordinary suddenly feels special. What felt normal becomes something she misses. As she replays moments in her head, her perception of the relationship shifts. Neil Strauss has explored this deeply. People don't fall in love with other people. They fall in love with the image they create in their minds about them. And that image isn't fixed, it shifts with circumstances, emotions, and most of all, absence. Because when someone is no longer available, the mind fills in the blanks with idealization. That's why many times when a man steps back, a woman who seemed indifferent suddenly feels his absence far more intensely than anyone expected. It's not just the person who's gone, it's the validation, the routine, the feeling of having someone interested. When that's lost, a void is created that her mind desperately wants to fill. But this doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process. At first, she might ignore it, move on like nothing happened. But over time, when there are no messages, no interactions, when the world keeps turning without you in it, she starts wondering if maybe she made a mistake. That doubt alone is enough to shift how she views the relationship. So what happens if she reaches out? This is where many men mess up. They react too fast, reply immediately, show enthusiasm, make it obvious they were waiting for that message. And the moment that happens, the entire power of your absence vanishes. Because if you respond too quickly, if you show too much interest at the wrong time, you confirm that there was never really a loss. Her mind, which was once filled with doubt, slides back into the comfort of knowing she has you anytime she wants. What needs to happen now is a shift in the dynamic. If she contacts you, you can't act like nothing changed. There has to be an adjustment in how you interact, a subtle shift in energy that shows you're not the same man anymore, that your life has moved forward, that you weren't anxiously waiting for her message, that her absence didn't shake your world. Neil Strauss explains that attraction isn't maintained by words, it's built on emotions. How you respond, your tone, the energy you project, all communicate more than any rehearsed speech ever could. If she feels her message doesn't affect you, that you're still living your life without depending on her attention, her interest grows, because uncertainty re-enters the game. The problem most men have is thinking they need to be cold or distant to spark attraction. But that's not true. The key is showing that her presence doesn't define your value, that your life remains compelling whether she's in it or not. And when she senses she doesn't have total control over the situation, when she feels there's a part of you that remains a mystery, that's when her attraction holds strong. The worst thing you can do is become too available after creating the space for her to think about you, because that wipes out all the progress your absence made. Instead, the best move is to show you've grown, evolved, that your life has moved on, and now more than ever, you have options and a clear purpose. And in that moment, she faces a new reality. You're no longer the man she took for granted. You're now a challenge, a mystery, an unfinished story her mind needs to solve. That's when the dynamic flips completely. When a woman truly feels your absence, her reaction is very different from what most men expect. She won't always show it right away, she might not even admit it to others, or even herself. But inside, a battle starts to unfold. On one side, her ego tells her not to care, that you just walked away and her life goes on. But on the other hand, her subconscious starts sending signals telling her something has changed, and that she needs to figure it out. This is where one of the most powerful principles of attraction comes into play: emotional investment. Neil Strauss explains that people value more what they've put effort, time, and emotion into. If a woman feels everything was under her control, that the relationship moved at her pace, and that you were always available, her level of investment was minimal. There was no risk, no real sense of loss. But when you stop talking, when you disappear from the equation, the balance shifts. Now there's a void, and her mind starts searching for answers. What's fascinating is that often this absence begins to show up in small actions she doesn't even notice at first. Maybe she checks your social media more than usual. Maybe she drops your name in conversations without realizing it. Maybe she sees something that reminds her of you and feels that strange flutter in her stomach, that subtle emptiness telling her something's missing. And most importantly, she begins to question her decision. wondering if she acted too fast in pulling away, if maybe she didn't appreciate what you had enough. But this only happens if you've managed the distance smartly. If instead of getting desperate and trying to grab her attention, you moved forward with your life, new projects, new opportunities, a mindset that shows you don't depend on her presence to feel whole. Because if she senses you just pulled away hoping she'd come back, her reaction will be totally different. In that case, she'll feel in control, confident that whenever she wants, she can get your attention without effort. Neil Strauss talks a lot about the power of perception in attraction dynamics. It's not just what you do, but how she perceives it. If your distance feels like desperation or manipulation, it loses its effect. But if she sees it as a sign of confidence, as someone following their own path without waiting for anyone's validation, the whole equation changes. As days and weeks pass, if she doesn't get signs you're still interested, her mind fills the empty spaces with assumptions. Here's the crucial detail. Most of those assumptions won't be in your favor. Her ego will try to convince her you simply lost interest. But deep down, there will be one question she can't ignore. Why? Why would someone who was so present suddenly disappear? Did he find someone better? Was she never that important to him? Was she wrong about how attracted he really was? This doubt is what sparks the real emotional investment, because now she's the one stuck with recurring thoughts about you, replaying scenarios in her mind, wrestling with questions that have no clear answers. And what makes this so powerful? Her ego fights it. She doesn't want to admit she misses you, doesn't want to give control to her emotions, so most likely she'll deny it, even to herself. But the mind has its own way of handling what we try to suppress. The more we try to avoid thinking about something, the more present it becomes. This is the turning point where several things can happen. She might try to distract herself, surround herself with others, fill her time with activities. But if the connection was real, if you left a mark, sooner or later, the thought of you will come back. The human brain isn't built to handle uncertainty passively. If it doesn't have answers, it will seek them out. That's why often, after a period of silence, she'll look for ways to reach back out. But she'll do it in a way that protects her vulnerability. Maybe a casual message, a reaction on social media, a seemingly innocent comment that's really a way to test your response. Because deep down, what she wants to know is if she still has some kind of power over you. And this is where most men fail. When they finally get a sign she's still interested, they jump right in, showing enthusiasm, availability, killing all the mystery they worked so hard to build and wiping out all the progress their absence created. The moment she gets the confirmation that she still has you whenever she wants, her mind no longer needs to search for answers. The attraction process stops dead in its tracks. The real secret here is holding control of the frame. It's not about ignoring her or playing with her emotions. It's about showing through your actions that you're still the same man with purpose, value, and independence. If she responds to your absence with interest, that doesn't mean you jump right back to where you were before. It means now you have the power to decide how the dynamic unfolds. Neil Strauss explains that desire always leans toward what's hard to get. The more she sees you as someone who doesn't depend on her validation, the stronger her desire grows. And here's the crucial point. It's not just about stepping away so she misses you. It's about becoming someone who genuinely doesn't need others' validation to feel complete. Because when that becomes your reality, the attraction you create is natural, authentic, and powerful. If right now she still shows no signs of missing you, it doesn't mean the strategy failed. Everyone takes their own time to process absence. Some will resist longer, others move faster. What matters is that you're not waiting for a specific outcome. You're not measuring every reaction, every detail, hoping she'll come back eventually. Because if your mindset stays stuck on expecting her response, there was never real detachment. What really generates attraction is the energy of someone who lives with purpose, who moves forward with their life, who isn't tied to one person's validation. And if you truly embrace that mindset, you won't just spark her interest. You'll become naturally attractive to many others. Because in the end, the key isn't just that she misses you. It's that when she does, she realizes she no longer holds the power over you she thought she had. And that's the biggest transformation you can achieve. As the emptiness of your absence grows, her mind starts working against her. Uncertainty becomes a seed slowly germinating inside her. Maybe at first she downplayed it, thinking contact would resume eventually, expecting some sign from you any moment. But when it doesn't happen, when time keeps passing without the validation she hoped for, doubt grows stronger. This is where Neil Strauss's scarcity principle kicks in. People value what they think they might lose, not because they want to lose it, but because the human mind naturally gravitates toward what's hard to get or keep. If she once saw you as always available, always present, someone who wasn't a challenge, your distance completely shifts that perception. What's interesting is that often during this phase, she'll try to convince herself she doesn't care. She might even talk to other people, seek distractions, surround herself with new experiences, hoping to numb the emptiness your absence left. But here's the key moment: comparison. Even if she never says it out loud, her mind begins comparing the interactions she's having now to the ones she had with you. And if the connection was real, if there was genuine attraction at some point, those comparisons won't always go in her favor. It's not that she suddenly idealizes you out of nowhere. It's that without you close, her mind reconstructs the image of you in a more positive light. She remembers the moments of excitement, the feeling of attraction, the special connection, and every time she tries to replace that with someone else and fails, the idealization grows stronger. Because now, deep in her subconscious, she starts to see you not just as someone she shared moments with, but as a unique experience that suddenly became unreachable. The problem with many men is that the moment they see her start reacting, when they feel their absence is making an impact, they rush to restore the old dynamic. And that's a mistake, because the second you become completely accessible again, the entire psychological process her mind was going through comes to a halt. Her curiosity fades. You're no longer a mystery, no longer a challenge. You become predictable, safe. And attraction doesn't grow in absolute security, but in the sense that there's something more to discover. What you have to understand is that this isn't about playing mind games. It's about letting her experience what your absence truly means for herself. When she's the one walking the path of doubt, uncertainty, and comparison, every little detail that reminds her of you hits way harder than any message you could send. And here's where Neil Strauss's strategy becomes even more powerful. Instead of chasing her attention or trying to win her back actively, what really makes an impact is showing through your actions that your life hasn't stopped. If she sees you moving forward, involved in new experiences, living a world that's just as interesting without her, she's confronted with a reality she didn't expect. Her ego told her you'd always be there, that your interest was guaranteed. But when she realizes that's not true, when she notices your energy doesn't revolve around her, a feeling wakes up inside her that few can resist: the desire to reclaim what they think they're losing. The mistake many men make is confusing distance with indifference. This isn't about disappearing forever. It's about creating the right context so she feels you're someone with options, someone who doesn't need her attention to validate himself. Because when you project that energy, you don't just spark her interest again, you completely shift the dynamic between you. If it gets to the point where she decides to make the first move, she won't do it obviously. Most times, she'll look for subtle ways to reconnect, trying to see if you're still available, if she can access you like before. Maybe she sends you a message without a clear reason. Maybe she interacts more with your posts. Maybe she brings up something only you two shared in her mind. This isn't just casual, it's her testing the waters, seeing if she still holds any control over the situation. And this is where most men lose their chance. When they spot a sign of interest, their instinct is to respond with enthusiasm, emotion, and energy that makes it clear they were waiting for that moment. But if you do that, you break all the frame you built. The key isn't rejecting or ignoring her. It's handling the situation with enough control to make her feel the dynamic has changed. When she notices you're no longer the same man, that you're not rushing to reclaim what you had, she faces a new reality. Her perception of you shifts. You stop being predictable and become someone interesting, someone with his own world, his own value. And at that moment, the desire to reconnect isn't just an option, it becomes an emotional need. Neil Strauss explains that human desire isn't static. It's always moving, always searching for stimuli that spark emotion and curiosity. When you understand this, you realize the real power in attraction isn't in what you say, but in what you project through your actions. If you make her see that your absence didn't change who you are, that you're still a man with purpose, confidence, and options, then the desire to be part of your world intensifies. At this point, if she comes back, she won't do it with the same mindset she left with. Now, she sees you differently. You're no longer the man waiting for her validation. You're someone with intrinsic value independent of her approval. And when you reach this level, the dynamic isn't the same anymore. You're the one controlling the situation, deciding how things unfold. That's the most powerful position in any relationship. What matters isn't just regaining attraction, it's maintaining it. If you simply go back to where you were before, the cycle repeats. But if you use this process to set a new dynamic, to show your value doesn't depend on her attention, then every choice you make comes from strength, not need. And that's the key to not just getting interest back, but keeping it over time. If she feels the need to reconnect now, it's because her perception has changed. You're no longer the available man who was always there. You're no longer the safe option she could take for granted. You now represent something more intriguing, something she doesn't fully control. And that uncertainty is what fuels attraction. But here's where most men make the final mistake. They think that just because she comes back, they've won, and the moment she does, they let their guard down. They jump back into conversation with too much enthusiasm. They show the same availability they had before, and instantly she senses the challenge is gone. At that moment, everything you built with distance and scarcity crumbles. Attraction isn't about a single moment of desire. It's about an ongoing dynamic of emotional investment. If she comes back, it's crucial you don't fall into the same old patterns. The key here is to project an energy of abundance, naturally showing that your life is full of experiences, opportunities, and meaningful connections. You don't need to convince her with words. It's enough that your attitude reflects someone who keeps growing, someone who isn't waiting for anyone's validation to feel whole. When you get this right, you'll notice her interactions with you change. She'll put in more effort, show more interest in grabbing your attention, and take more initiative to keep the connection alive. The most powerful part of this transformation is that once you reach this level, it's no longer just about her. You're not playing games to win someone back. You've shifted your perception of yourself and how you relate to others. And when you have that mindset, when you stop acting from need and start moving from choice, the whole game changes. Now you hold the power to decide what kind of people you want in your life, what relationships truly deserve your time and energy. It's not about making someone miss you. It's about becoming someone who naturally generates attraction because their life is interesting, because they have options, because their energy is magnetic. And when you get there, you don't just regain control in one relationship. You become someone who doesn't need validation from anyone else. If this message resonates with you, if there's something in these words that shifted how you see the dynamics of relationships, then I want to invite you to be part of something bigger. This channel is dedicated to sharing insights that can truly change the way you see yourself and how you connect with others. If you've ever felt lost in the game of attraction, if you've ever wanted to understand the psychology behind desire and human relationships better, you'll find the answers here. Now it's your turn to take action. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think about this topic, what experiences you've had, and what lessons you've learned. I want this space to be a place where we grow together, where we share ideas that help us improve every part of our lives. And if you think this content could help someone else, share it. Because the best way to learn is to spread knowledge to others on this path of growth. Subscribe if you haven't yet and hit the bell so you don't miss the next videos. This is just the beginning. There's so much more to discover, more strategies, more ideas that can change how you see the world. So stay tuned because together, we're going to take this knowledge to another level. See you in the next video, and remember, it's not about chasing, it's about attracting. It's not about seeking validation, it's about becoming someone who's naturally impossible to ignore.